1250 KTRS.
Glad to be with you.
Tell us about this book. This is Tony Messenger. I'm the Metro columnist at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, filling in for McGraw Millhaven. And normally, I've written about politics for most of my career. Normally, when a senator is publishing a book this time of year, it's because he wants to be the vice president. Now, I don't think that's the case in your particular situation at where you're at with your career. Tell us about this memoir and why you wrote it.
Well, the reason I wrote it, I became majority leader about a year and a half ago, and unlike people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, I was not an overnight sensation. It was a long game, and I thought people might be interested in some of the adversity that I've had, because we all have setbacks, and how I dealt with it. In my case, I got hit with polio when I was 2 years old, pretty early in life. My dad was overseas fighting the Germans in World War II, and we were in a little town in Alabama. It affected my left leg, the quadricep muscle between the knee and the hip. Fortunately, we were about 60 miles from Warm Springs, Georgia, where President Roosevelt had set up a polio treatment center. My mother took me over there. They taught her the physical therapy regimen, said you need to do this 4 times a day, and you need to keep him off his feet. Can you imagine that? Watching a 2-year-old like that. She did it for 2 years.
Wow.
And my first memory in life was the last visit to Warm Springs, where they told my mother it looked like I was going to have a normal childhood, be able to walk without a brace and maybe without even a limp. And so I thought people would be interested in that story. Polio now is almost gone in the whole world.
It's something that young people today don't even really know about.
Yeah, it was a scourge up until the 50s when the vaccine was discovered or created, and then now it's been virtually eradicated. But I tell that story because we all have our setbacks, you know, some of us more than others, but I think the only way to fail in this great country of ours is to be defeated by the inevitable speed bumps of life or setbacks of life.
Senator, I haven't read your book yet, but I read a story this weekend about a section that you wrote about the Voting Rights Act. And I want to talk about that in a second, because that has some specific application to some things going on in Missouri. But I was interested in the notes that your staff sent, because I've seen this kind of thing happen at political events. Apparently, President Ronald Reagan came out to endorse you one time at a rally, and he got your name wrong. Tell me about that.
Well, I was in a long shot campaign anyway, and we'd sort of been begging the Reagan campaign for some acknowledgement for a long time. It was one of the presidential debates was in Louisville, my hometown, and afterwards it was a big rally. I had my place on the stage. We had a film crew there. We were all ready to film his endorsement, and he stood up to walked up to the microphone and said, "I'm so happy to be here tonight with my good friend Mitch McConnell." It was one of many humbling moments in a come-from-behind campaign.
It's one of those things, Senator, that as you know, at these political rallies, you bring in the big name from out of town, and they often have just met somebody, but everybody's good friend.
Yeah.
Everybody's somebody's good friend. You write in the book about being there when the Voting Rights Act was signed. I want you to talk about that, and then talk about what's going on in terms of voter ID laws being passed around the country. I know your party is in favor of them, but a lot of people say that those laws are diminishing the very Voting Rights Act that you write about being so important to you.
Yeah, as a young man, I had been an intern in a particular senator from Kentucky's office the summer of '64 when the Civil Rights Bill of '64 passed, and watched that with great admiration. And then I came back to visit the next summer, and he took me over. I just happened to hit it lucky on the day that LBJ was going to sign the Voting Rights Act over in the Capitol. He took me over, and I had a chance to witness that. The Voting Rights Act had been an incredibly successful piece of legislation. The best example, for example, former governor of Mississippi always told everybody there were more African-American elected officials now in Mississippi than any other state in America. But there has been an effort, I think, lately to try to co-opt the Voting Rights Act to turn it into something else. That is, trying to suggest that having a photo ID, which would guarantee that people were not cheating, would be somehow a suppression of the vote. I don't view that as accurate. The Supreme Court has already upheld 6-3 photo ID at the polls as not being suppression. And so there's nothing, in my view, about showing a photo ID to vote, which we'd have to do to cash a check or to get on a plane. Nothing about that suggests suppression. So I think that's just an effort by largely the Democrats to co-opt the Voting Rights Act, which we all support, and turn it into something else that gives them an electoral advantage.
Senator Mitch McConnell, his book is The Long Game, a memoir. I'd love to get into this more, but we have got to take a break. You're listening to the Big 550. Thank you, Senator. KTRS.
Home this year, the best place